Just a little thing. So Matthias Tierbach and I have decided that we're going to hit Matthias teaching me how to be a developer, use CI/CD and Git, and we thought that because I'm business and self-taught, we thought that we would share our learnings with you. So we're going to be running a podcast every 2 weeks on I think a Wednesday lunchtime, just for half an hour, where he very kindly is going to try and explain to me how all of this works so that we can demystify it for you and for everyone. So we're hoping it'll be fun, but peanut butter and chocolate. Yeah. But we get on very well, so it should be lots of yes, you can be, Julie, you can join us. We're going to stream it live on YouTube once a fortnight, and we'll record it on our YouTube channel so that you can learn along with us, because I'm sure the questions I ask will be appropriate as well, because I'll ask lots of questions, as Daniel knows. So without any further ado, I'm going to hand over to Daniel to take us through C# scripting, which I'm absolutely thrilled about. Questions in the chat. And I think we forgot to ask Daniel, do you want us to wait at certain times or just...
I think Teams presentations like this are always a bit weird when it's just me speaking into the void. So I actually prefer to take questions during the session when we're doing it this way. So just raise your hand. I'll arrange my monitor so that I can see if someone wants to ask a question. I may not notice it if you only ask the question in chat, but maybe in that case you can just interrupt me, Sue, and let me know that someone asked a question. So
yeah, I will. And
we do, Daniel. Yeah, if we see a question, we'll listen.
Yeah, and we keep the screens on so that, because I hate talking to blank. So you'll see Antony and I. And let's go. I love that.
Yes, let's go. Let me just make sure I move everything around so that I can still view the chat and everything. 1 second. Okay, I think we should be more or less ready here. Okay, great. Let's get started. So this session is called Tabular Editor Scripting Magic, and it's quite fitting since I guess most of the people on this call are British. You probably all know who this guy is. He's a wizard. And actually, when you really start getting into scripting with Tabular Editor, you cannot help but feel a little bit like a wizard yourself, because you can do some magical things with your semantic model at that stage. So it's quite fitting to use Harry Potter as sort of the figure, the mascot of this presentation. And you'll see I've used a number of stills from the movies throughout this slide deck. So without further ado, just brief. Oh, I messed up the animation there, didn't I? It was supposed to sort of show a wizard hat go on top of my head, but that didn't work, so never mind. So yeah, as you said, my name is Daniel. I'm the author of Tabular Editor. I'm currently working full-time as the CTO of the company behind Tabular Editor. I'm also a 6 times Microsoft Data Platform MVP, and I'm known for my contributions to Power BI. If you've seen the little external tools ribbon inside Power BI Desktop, that was actually my creation. So yeah, with that out of the way, let's move forward. So just to set the stage here, what exactly is scripting in Tabular Editor? Well, with tooling in general, one size rarely fits all. It's my firm belief that any good software for professionals must be extensible in various ways, and we've even seen this like from the beginning of time with the Office tools like Excel and Outlook and so on. They've had the ability for end users to customize and extend the functionality inside of these applications using macros and VBA and you see this in many different software applications, from anything from design software to professional development software. Most of these professional tools are all extensible. And I think for something as important as semantic model development, we also need some software that's extensible, because even though Tabular Editor is a great tool, it doesn't do everything, and it might not do exactly what you need it to do. And that's basically where scripting comes in. And since Tabular Editor was originally developed using C#, we of course also use C#, the programming language for scripting. And the same scripting interface is actually available in both Tabular Editor 2, our free version, and Tabular Editor 3, our commercial version. Now, the demos that I'm going to run through during the session will all be in Tabular Editor 2. So everything I show you during this session is something you can just go right ahead and do. You don't need to buy a license or anything like that. So what can you use these scripts for? Well, you can use them, of course, to modify the model. That's sort of the main use case. Anything you'd like to automate, like let's say you have several similar changes that you want to apply to the model. Of course, you could just use the user interface and go through all of the model objects one by one and apply the changes. But as I usually say, where's the fun in that? Let's rather spend some time writing a script to see if we can automate some of these things, because then maybe when the next time we encounter the same scenario, then we'll already have a script made that can help us do it. Scripts can also be made to interact with the user, so you can sort of provide your own custom user interface, which is quite useful, especially if you're planning to share these scripts with your teammates or colleagues, because then they don't need to be familiar with C# scripting. They can just load the script, run it, and then the user interface of the script will ask them any questions they need to answer. And then I guess the icing on the cake is that you can save scripts inside Tabular Editor as so-called macros, and these integrate nicely into the Tabular Editor UI, which you will see shortly. Lastly, I'll say C# might seem a bit daunting, especially if you're coming from a business analytics background. You may not have written much of C#, if anything at all. However, it's really not that difficult of a language. The syntax is pretty straightforward. I mean, if you know DAX, then learning C# should be a breeze. You'll find many examples online. And in fact, these days, large language models are actually really good at writing C# scripts, even C# scripts specifically for Tabular Editor. So just ask your favorite LLM what you want to do and tell them that you need it as a Tabular Editor script, and then it'll, like 9 times out of 10, most likely just spit out exactly the code that you need. It's also a great way to learn to write C# code, actually. So yeah, we've written an entire blog post about this very topic. So if you're interested in that, go check that out. So I'm guessing I'll be sharing the slide deck, and in fact everything I show you, so both the slide deck and all of the demos that you'll see here are in fact already publicly available in my personal GitHub repo. But I'll make sure to share the link so that you can still find it. Maybe somebody already shared it in the chat, but if not, yeah, we'll make sure that it's made available to you. All right, so let's get started here with the very first few basic examples, and some of these might seem a bit boring, but just bear with me for a little bit while we sort of just make sure that we sort of build up and that everything that everyone on the call sort of understands what we're doing, and yeah, we have to start somewhere, right? So in the first example, let's first of all bring up Tabular Editor. Let me, for this demo, create an entirely new model. Can you see my screen all right? Is Tabular Editor, is it visible enough on your end, or do I need to? I see a thumbs up. Okay, that's good. So in this example, we're just starting basically from scratch with an empty model. And then the first thing we're going to do is actually not use scripting, but we're just going to manually go through the UI in order to import some tables to this model. And I just happen to have an AdventureWorks sample database on my local machine, so I can just quickly click a few tables here. Let's go with the customer date, product. Let's also go with incident status. Just a few simple tables here to get started. Let's get those imported. And now, typically, when you're importing tables from a relational data warehouse, the naming convention might not be exactly what you need it to be in your semantic model. Like typically, we say that names of tables and columns in semantic models should be business friendly, and that means we should get rid of technical prefixes like dim, for dimension, or fact for fact tables. And of course, Tabular Editor, you can just hit F2 and do a batch rename, so we can quickly get rid of the dim prefix. And also the fact prefix, we can just edit that. But then when we start to look at all of the columns, if we wanted to sort of separate the words into like individual words instead of having everything written as Pascal case, where it's just one big word with capital letters, then of course we could, once again, we could do that manually, splitting it up. But again, where's the fun in that, right? Let's see if we can automate this a little bit. So we actually have a script that does just that. Let me just find that first demo. So this is a script that you see over here on the right, the C# script. It's just 6 lines of code. And in fact, the magic happens in this particular line that I'm highlighting here, where we have this function we can call. It's called split camel case, which is a function that you can call on any string, really. And then what it'll do is it'll put a space in between each capital letter of that word. And the way this works is that all of the code here is inside a so-called for each loop. And that means that it's going to repeat it once for each object in selected. And selected is whatever selection you make over on the left here in the Tom Explorer. So that means these scripts are like really context aware, because they run on whatever you select. And you can even make it more dynamic to only consider objects of a certain type. Like, for example, here we have an exception where if the selected object is a column that happens to end with the name key, then we just continue. So we start over in the loop. So we basically skip this. And the logic here is that we don't want to apply this split camel case to columns that have the key suffix, because these are technical columns that need to be hidden to the end user anyway. And in fact, let's go right ahead and do that hiding of the columns right away. So I'm adding a pair of curly braces here. And then, so basically, if the column satisfies this condition, in addition to just skipping, we're just going to set the is hidden property to true. So we might as well do that in one go here. So now let me select all of these columns on my fact table, and let's run the script. And I made it boo-boo. And that's because I need to actually cast object as column. So don't want to go too much into the technical details here. You can find multiple explanations on that online, but let me run it again, and let's just look at the result now. So now you can see all of the names here have been nicely split into separate words based on where the capital letters are. So now it looks much more nice from a business user point of view. And moreover, the addition that I did here completely unplanned, which didn't work in the initial iteration, now actually works. So all of the columns that end with the key suffix have now been hidden, and we can tell because Tabular Editor now writes the names in gray. And in fact, if we want to see what this looks like from an end user perspective, we could toggle off the display of hidden columns. And so now we're only left with the columns that are actually visible in the model. So this is a script that very quickly tidied up our model with business-friendly names, and so basically making it much easier to navigate. Now, the next demo I want to show you is taking this one step further, basically. So once again, imagine you have a model here. So here I loaded a model that I already prepared in advance, but the principle is the same. I imported some tables. I didn't clean up the column names on this model, but that doesn't really matter too much for this demo. What I wanted to show you here is that when you create a model like this with Tabular Editor, then initially when you just import the tables, you don't have any relationships between these tables. And you can see that because the relationships folder up here is it doesn't have anything in it. So that means that these are just 7 tables that are just floating separately. For those of you using Tabular Editor 3, or if you open this model in Power BI Desktop, you could open the diagram view, and then you would see that no tables have been defined between these, no relationships have been defined between these tables. Now, of course, we could create all of those relationships manually, but again, where's the fun in that? And especially imagine if you had several, like many tables in here, maybe even hundreds of tables, then for sure you don't want to try to sort of piece the puzzle together of fitting out what goes where. So here on my other monitor, I just opened Tabular Editor just to show you this diagram. So let me open the same model that we just saw a moment ago. It's here. So this one. So this is just Tabular Editor 3 for comparison, just because I want to show you this specific view of the model where we can see any relationships. And as you can see here, there are no relationships between these 7 tables. So what we'll do is we'll run a script. And again, just so you can appreciate what the script actually does, I'll do this one demo in Tabular Editor 3, even though you could run the same script in Tabular Editor 2, that will work just fine. So let me open the script here. Yes, here's the script. So this script will work just as well in Tabular Editor 2. And I don't want to go into details about exactly what the script does, but the purpose of this script is to basically just create relationships in the model by matching column names. So essentially, if you have, let's say on your fact table, you have a column called product key, then the script will search for a dimension named product. And on that table, it will search for a similarly named column, product key, which needs to be which should be the primary key on this dimension. And then it'll realize that, hey, okay, so if these have the same data type, then we can match them together, so we can create a relationship between these 2 tables on that column. In situations where you have multiple potential relationships between the same 2 tables, like for example between our internet sales fact and our date table. On the fact table, we have several date key columns. So we have a due date key, order date key, ship date key. Well, in that case, we can just create one relationship for each of these date key columns, but we'll have to make sure that only one of them is set as active, because in Power BI, it's not possible to have multiple active relationships between the same 2 tables. And the script will take care of all of that. So what we'll do is I'll just select my fact tables. In this case, I still only have one fact table, namely internet sales. And then let's do it like this, so we can still view the diagram over here on the left and see the script on the right. So I'm selecting the internet sales table, then I'm running the script, and just like that, we see some arrows appearing over here on the left in my diagram view. So let's do an auto range, and what we end up with is this nice looking star schema, where you can see, just like I said, we now have all 3 relationships set up between the date and the fact table, with only one of them being active. So yeah, that's a nice little trick. But of course, this only works if the columns in your table adhere to these naming conventions. Now in Power BI, I believe things are a little different. When you import tables, it also has some capability for automatically creating relationships. And I believe it also considers the data content of the columns. And then based on that, it's trying to guess what the relationships are. But the point of this demo is to show you that with a script, you can have as much control as you need on how these relationships should be created.
It just amazes me, Daniel, just how quick it is when you write some code and you press play, and it'll just go through your whole model, and it's just bang, quick.
Yeah, and see, that's one of the big benefits of Tabular Editor, both 2 and 3 actually, is that we don't consider the data in the model. We only consider the model metadata, and that just makes it so much faster than having to wait for Power BI Desktop to load all of the data in the fact tables and trying to sort of match columns based on their content and so on. So yeah, that's basically our advantage. Since we're only working with model metadata, we can do things a bit faster. And on that note, one of the really cool features of Tabular Editor is that, let's say you run these scripts. Let me go back to Tabular Editor 2 just to show you the same thing over here. And let's run the create relationship script again on my internet sales table. So just like in Tabular Editor 3, we have all of the relationships created. Now, my favorite feature of both versions of Tabular Editor is this little button up here, undo. So basically, any change you make to the semantic model, if you happen to make a mistake, you hit Control Z, and it'll roll back what you just did. Oh, now I had the cursor in the script pane, so that's why I just undid the script. If I move the focus over to the Tom Explorer and I then hit undo script, then you can see it will roll back the change. So even if you have a script that makes 100 changes to a model, if it turns out something went wrong and it did the wrong thing, then you just hit one button and you go right back to where you were before you ran the script.
I didn't know that the undo was dependent upon where your mouse is.
Yeah, no, so it's, I mean, most people don't really notice because it's quite natural that if you type something and you then hit Control Z, well, then your cursor is still inside the editor, so it's only just undoing the keystrokes. Whereas if your cursor is over in Tom Explorer, and let's say you just made a bunch of copies of tables here, so now just spam Control C, Control V, then of course hitting Control Z should undo that. So it's kind of context depending, but and most people don't notice, and that's actually a good thing because it means that the feature is working as intended.
Daniel, there was a question from Jake about the save commit, asking if the save commit is a Tabular Editor specific or part of Microsoft C# library.
So Jake, could you explain? Could you clarify what you mean by save commit? So I'm guessing you could.
He'll come back in a minute.
Okay, yeah.
He's on his phone, so metadata, not commit.
Oh, I see. So actually, that's probably tying back to what I said earlier about Tabular Editor being much faster to work with because it's only working with the model metadata, and nothing really happens on your semantic model until you hit the save button. So the question was whether it's specific or part of Microsoft's C# library. Well, the answer is that it's just the way that Tabular Editor was designed to work with the C# library that Microsoft provides, in that we basically just batch all of the changes that we make, and then we only synchronize them up to whatever server you might be connected to when you hit the save button. If you were just using Microsoft's library for programmatically working with semantic models, you could do exactly the same thing. It's just a matter of not synchronizing the changes until you decide to do that. And that's basically what we are exposing in Tabular Editor. So why they didn't go for the same approach in Power BI Desktop, I have no idea. Because as you know, in Power BI Desktop, every time you make a change, you have to wait for the synchronization to happen, and especially on a big model, that can take a while to complete. So I hope that answers the question. So let's move forward. The next demo I wanted to show is how we can create measures from columns, because that's also a very common next step once we've. Let me just make sure I have the relationships in this model. Yeah, here we go. So that's a common next step. Once we have all of the objects and all the relationships and we have the tables, is we want to create explicit measures. That's the best practice, that instead of having columns with numbers like sales amount and cost and so on, we should ideally hide the columns and then create a DAX measure that has the formula for how the values in that column should be aggregated. And there are several good reasons for why we should do that, which I'm not going to go into details here. But instead of manually creating each such measure, so sum of sales amount would be how you type out the name of the measure, and then you have to specify some DAX expression like sum, and then you can drag in the sales column to get the DAX reference and so on. That's all good. But again, where's the fun in that? Let's write a script to automate that. So that's the next demo I'm going to show you here. Again, a very simple script that I like to use as just a showcase of the power of scripting in C# in Tabular Editor. So all I need to do in this case is I need to select the columns for which I want to create measures. So let's go with sales amount also and tax amount. So I guess five columns in total or something like that. So let's just run the script, and just like that, you can see we now have these 5 measures added to the model, where we have a nice DAX formula for each of them. We even have the description property specified, and there's a format string as well. And all of this was basically written by the script. And of course, you could go much further with this you could, like, based on the data type of the column that you're creating the measure on top of, you could have a conditional in here, so you could have different format strings depending on the data type and whatnot. So of course it's just a matter of the use case that you need. So very simple script here that's very easy to extend. And so yeah, so just like that, I got these 5 measures created. Now, one interesting pattern that we see a lot in Power BI is a pattern called the parameter table pattern. And basically, the idea with the parameter table is that instead of so let's say the user of my report wants to look at some metrics, so sales amount, for example, and they already set up a nice report with some visuals. Where they're slicing it by various things like product category, dates, and whatnot. And now they decide, oh, I now want to switch this measure. So instead of looking at sales amount, I want to look at cost amounts or whatever. And I see, in fact, I never got the cost in here. I don't know if this is the right measure. Anyway, I'll just run the script again, and then I get another measure for this column. But let's say that the report user wants an easy way to switch between what measure they're looking at. Now, the way you normally model that is that you can create what's called a parameter table. So basically a table that just has a single column with the names of the various measures that you want to expose this way. And then you need one additional measure, which we call the switch measure. And this measure contains a DAX expression with a switch. And then based on what the user is filtering on the parameter table, you can return the actual value of that measure. It's quite a common pattern, and it's easy to create and easy to understand. But the problem with it is that it's pretty difficult to maintain, because let's say you're adding a new measure to this model in the future, and you want to update your parameter table pattern to include that measure. Well, then you need to make sure that you both update the values that are available in the parameter table, and also the switch expression needs to be updated. And it's just a hassle. So let's see a different way of dealing with that. So I prepared a model here. Here we go. And in fact, this was from last time I ran the game, so let me get rid of that table. So basically, in this model, you can see I have a bunch of measures, and now I want to provide my report users with an easy way of switching between the measures instead of having to actually go and redefine the visual in the reports. So what we'll do is we'll run this create parameter table script, and all we need to do to run it is we need to select the measures that need to be included in the parameter table. So I now selected the measures in the Sum Explorer. We run the script, and then just like that, we get this new calculated table created. You can see here's the DAX expression. Let's go ahead and format it so the DAX looks a little bit nicer. So you can see it's just a one-column table with the names of all of these measures. And inside that table, you'll find an internet sales measure. So let's also go and format that. And this is the switch expression that I was talking about earlier. So based on what the user selected on my parameter table, we'll just return the corresponding measure. And so let's hit save, and then let's go and see what this looks like in Power BI. And basically, it allows users to create reports like this, where you have a slicer. Oh, I said it's not working. Let me try to refresh this. Okay. Oh, yeah, sorry, I know what I did wrong. It's because I didn't refresh this table. And so I need to go over to Management Studio, and then I need to do a process of the database, in this case, since it's running on local analysis service instance. Of course, if I was just working against a model in Power BI Desktop, then this refresh would happen automatically. So let's go back and hit refresh, and now you see things working nicely, and the user can just select which measure they want to see, and then all of the metrics update. So this is the parameter table pattern.
Love it, love it, love it. Yeah. I've not used that. That's brilliant.
And now let's say for some reason that you wanted to add a new measure to the model, and you want to call this, let's say, freight less discount, and I have no idea why people would want to make a measure like this, but let's just put the definition of the measure in here, and we hit save, and yes, we want to override. Now my parameter table doesn't contain the new measure that I added. So in order to update my parameter table and the logic on my switch measure, I'll basically just have to run the script again. And then it should go and update these definitions. So let's take a look. Yeah, so sure enough, now we have the freightless discount. And that all means that if I now save this, go back to Management Studio and do another processing. By the way, if you're using Tabular Editor 3, you can also do the processing from inside Tabular Editor 3, or you could create a script which will work in both T2 and T3 to do this processing. So now let's go back to Power BI Desktop. Let's hit refresh. And now we have this weird freightless discount measure as part of our parameter table switch up here. So that's another nice little use case for that pattern. And it also shows now nicely how scripts can help you with these sort of maintenance tasks for things like that and for certain modeling patterns.
Daniel, with that parameter table, could you also create a field parameter table, which I know you've got some properties to change, so you can use the C# to change those properties on that Absolutely. At the same time?
Absolutely. So field parameters are in fact just calculated tables that has some special annotations on them, which causes Power BI to treat them in a specific way, so that, for example, you can use them to change a hierarchy on a visual like this. But from a C# perspective, it's just another calculated table, and you can write a C# script that adds the annotations if you wanted to, so that it behaves just like a field parameter table in Power BI. So absolutely yes.
Okay, cool. So you can actually change. So you can change the properties then on any of these things, really. So
for sure.
Just like you can change the format string on the measures and things like that. So
yeah,
okay.
Exactly. All right, so the last thing I just want to show you here. So now I have been talking a little bit about Tabular Editor 3, even though this was not intended as like a commercial for Tabular Editor 3. However, one of the really nice things of Tabular Editor 3 is that you can easily view the content of tables. So, for example, if you're connected to an also service instance of Power BI server, you can easily view the contents of these tables. And Tabular Editor 2 does not have this feature built in. So as I said earlier, Tabular Editor 2 only works with the model metadata, not the data. However, thanks to scripting, that's not entirely true, because it's very, very easy to write a script which will just execute a DAX query against the model and then show you the results of that query directly. And here I've prepared a script which is, in fact, context sensitive. So depending on what you selected, it'll execute different DAX queries. So for example, if I just select a single measure, say cost amount, and I run this, well, then I just get like the total with an empty filter context of that particular measure. If I select a single column, like let's say we select, where is it? Product color, and we will run the script again, then we get a list of the unique, the distinct values of that column. If we select an entire table, well, then we see a preview of the entire table. So just like that, you added basically Tabular Editor 3 functionality to Tabular Editor 2. Now, don't tell my boss I said that. But
David showed me how to do it for a table, but I didn't know that you could actually do it for everything. That's brilliant.
Absolutely. So that's just a matter of adding that, like these conditionals to your script to deal with these different situations. Like I think one of the other examples we have is like, let's say you select multiple measures like I'm doing here, and then run the script. Well, then it outputs a nice little grid that shows you the total of all of these. And you could go further, like you could, let's say you combined like a selection of some measures with a particular column, then you could generate a DAX query that would slice those measures by that column, for example. So there are many possibilities here. The sky's the limit, basically.
Yeah.
And then going back to what I said in the introduction, that you can actually save these scripts as reusable macros. This is actually a really nice script to save, because then it becomes really handy. So if we give it a name, like let's call this demo / show or run DAX, let's call it this, and then we'll just specify that this script should work both on tables, on measures, and on columns. We hit OK, and then just like that, even if I don't have the script open in Tabular Editor, now that I have the macro saved, I can just select my objects and then run the DAX, and it will just integrate nicely. So if I select some columns here, I can run the DAX just in those columns. Oh yeah, by the way, this is another one. If you select a number of columns, then instead of showing the distinct values, it's just showing some basic statistics here, like the number of distinct values, the minimum value and maximum value. That's also a possibility. So that's a really nice little script to add to your toolbox for that. So yeah.
That's
Daniel,
brilliant.
quick question.
Yeah.
David asked about with Power BI desktop hardening and Tyndall GA, are there still unsupported features we can create in TE that Power BI won't support?
Great question, David. Thank you. Actually, Microsoft announced very recently, like a couple of months ago, that Power BI Desktop is now fully hardened, meaning that you can open any model.bim file, so any semantic model in Power BI Desktop, and it'll work. So the answer to the question is no, there are no unsupported features. So things you can make in things you can do in Tabular Editor, which will cause you to no longer be able to open the model in Power BI Desktop. Now there are still some things that Power BI Desktop doesn't support in terms of showing. So you can edit everything using the Tyndall view, as you know, but there are some things that they don't have in the UI. So for example, if you have tables with multiple partitions, which is again a common scenario in an enterprise setting, that you partition your fact data by year, for example, then you will not be able to edit the Power Query partitions inside of Power BI Desktop, or at least in the Power Query editor. But you can still do that using the Tyndall view. So yes, Power BI Desktop is fully hardened, and it supports everything that you can do through third-party tools, which is amazing, because in the past there were a lot of limitations on that. And not just that, but they also lifted the restriction in the Power BI service. So if you connect directly to a model in the service through the Power BI XMLA endpoint and make some changes, then it used to be the case that you would no longer be able to download a PBIX file for that particular model. That restriction is no longer there. So even if you modified your models through third-party tools like Tabular Editor, you can still download PBIX files that you can open in Power BI Desktop. So that's really great work by Rui Romano and the team at Microsoft who worked with Power BI Desktop. That makes it much easier for users to adopt these third-party tools.
I like that, because sometimes you do need to download it. So brilliant.
I mean, Daniel, one question I got is, on all of the scripts that you are creating, are they saved locally in your instance of TE on your machine? Could you, because you can obviously put TE on two different machines.
Yes.
Can you store those scripts on like a GitHub or something like that you can reference it from two different machines?
Right. So we don't have any feature built into Tabular Editor that lets you sort of share scripts across machines. All of the scripts that you save, for example, as macros, are stored in a local file on your machine. There is, if I recall correctly, a possibility, or maybe that only works for that might only work for best practice rules, where you can put them in a location where it will be shared by all users of the machine, but still it's local to that one machine. Specifically for C# scripts, the reason for that is mostly due to security, because after all, these are C# scripts. They can do a lot of damage if you run like malicious code. So for that, we cannot trust that if you just put in a URL or something that you don't control, that you can always trust the code. So this is one way for us to sort of mitigate that, is to require that you have the file placed, that the script definitions are placed locally. So we are
just a quick question from Foimi about conflict when you change between Power BI and TE3. It syncs, doesn't it? So it'll tell you. You press save and then it syncs it back and forth.
Right. So if you're making if you're connected directly to a model in Power BI Desktop and you're connected to that model through Tabular Editor, then of course you can get into a situation where conflicts arise, because as we saw earlier, you can make many changes in Tabular Editor before you hit the save button. So just as a simple example, let's say that you're adding multiple measures to a table and you didn't hit the save button, and then at the same time you go over to Power BI Desktop and then you delete that table. So what will happen in that case is that Tabular Editor will pick up that something changed in the model while you're connected. So you're in this conflicting state basically, because in Tabular Editor you added some measures, but then the table you added the measures to is now gone. And Tabular Editor then gives you a prompt and basically asks you to either reload the model from Tabular Editor or save the changes from Tabular Editor. So there's no real conflict resolution. It's either last one wins or just like save the changes again from Tabular Editor. So for that reason, like as a best practice, if you're developing models that way, like having both Power BI Desktop and Tabular Editor open at the same time, then a good habit is that every time you switch back to Power BI Desktop, just hit the save button in Tabular Editor before you switch back, because then you will never get into a conflicting state like this.
Yeah, agree.
I mean, Daniel, what I tend to do is, well, for me personally, my practice is that once I've done a TE, I close out TE. Then I don't get mixed up between the two, because I've done it so many times, as you're saying.
Yes.
And then I just like I'm not sure which one I've actually is the master, essentially. Yeah. So I just find I'd rather just safely is just close it out and then go back to desktop, and then I could, you've got the external thing just to open it up again if you have to.
Yeah, I agree. And then I would say that
I have TE open all the time. So, I just press save.
So at least, and actually, you would face exactly the same challenges if you were exclusively using Power BI Desktop and using the template view to make some of the more advanced changes, because the template view would have exactly the same issues. If you define some measures in there and then simultaneously you went back and deleted the table, then you suddenly have a template script that's sort of incompatible with what you have in the model. So again, it's just considerations that if you're using multiple tools to edit the model, then you need to be aware of this. And that's also one of the reasons why, if you have access to Power BI Premium per use or Power BI or Fabric, Power BI Premium or Fabric capacity, then the recommended workflow is to just not use Power BI Desktop at all, but just connect Tabular Editor directly to the XML endpoint and make all your changes directly through Tabular Editor. And then if for some reason you still need to go to Power BI Desktop, close down all instances of Tabular Editor, as you said, Antony, because just minimize the risk of getting into a conflict in the first place. All right. So Sue, how long time do we have today?
We've got another 15 minutes, if that's okay.
Okay. So I probably won't be able to finish all of my demos, but the good thing is that they are available online, so you can still find them there. So let's move on to the next demo, which is time intelligence and steroids. One of the demos that I always like to show, especially after showing the script that creates all of the measures, is a script that you can run that will create various flavors of these measures. So a year-to-date calculation, a month-over-month, and so on. But it's all based on a standard script where you'll have to modify the script if you want to have other to add additional calculations. So for this demo, I actually prepared one that's a little more interesting, and which also shows how you can customize and create your own user interface inside of Tabular Editor. And I think actually I need to load a different model for this demo to work. So yeah, here's the one I wanted.
Just a quick one, Daniel.
Go ahead.
So what someone was asking about cloning your scripts from the from your repo. You could just copy them and put them in. Could you copy them and put them in the local app data file that you can?
So you don't need to clone it. You can just once you have the script visible on GitHub, you can just basically copy it there and paste it into the C#.
David's answered as well. Perfect, brilliant. I'll let you carry on.
All right, so let's see how this works, because here is a model. It has a couple of measures, and I prepared a nice date table with, I set it up as a calendar table. I even created some new custom calendars on this table, and this is part of a new feature in Power BI called calendar-based time intelligence, which for the first time ever actually allows us to use built-in DAX functions for things like week-to-date calculations. So that's a new feature that came out. I think that was announced during FabCon, just 1.5 months ago. And so here I already prepared a few calendars on this table. And basically a calendar is just a mapping of a few of the columns on your calendar table, where you basically explicitly specify, okay, so I have a column named ISO year, and I want to map this to my year time unit. and for my ISO week of year, there's a week of year time unit, and so on and so forth. Because this information basically allows Power BI to treat these columns a bit more intelligently. So based on what the user selected, it will know how to deal with how to remove certain filters on the calendar table and to basically apply this time intelligence logic. And the performance is actually a little bit better once you're using the calendar-based time intelligence. And so this demo, we have the script, where the script also has some nice UI. So let me just run it so you can see what happens. So the dialog box that you're seeing here is actually created from inside the script. So this dialog basically asks the user to choose whatever. So first of all, whether they want to create the time intelligence measures based on a column. That's how we used to do things before this calendar-based time intelligence works. You can see if I choose this option, I don't have an option to create a week-to-date measure. Whereas if I choose my year, week, date calendar, then I will have an option to create a week-to-date calculation, but not a quarter-to-date, since quarter is not a part. And it looks like there's a bug in here, because in fact it shouldn't suggest month-to-date when I'm on a year, week, date calendar, basically a calendar that doesn't define the month level. So the idea is that it should be aligned to whatever time units are specified in each calendar. So just to show the difference between the classic time intelligence, which we have here. So let's just create all of these, and you can see just like that, it spits out a ton of measures. So each of these then have the DAX formula. So in this case, total month to date, which is a built-in DAX function, and then it specifies the column of my date table. So this is how we used to do time intelligence in DAX using the built-in functions. If instead I run the script again, so now I just hit Control Z to undo everything. I run the script again, and this time I'm going to choose my year, week, date. And let me just deselect this one because it doesn't make sense. So I'm choosing my year, week, date calendar, and then we run the script again. And once again, it spits out a ton of different measures. Now you can see, so this one is now using the new total week to date function, which is the new function in DAX. And instead of specifying a column name here, it specifies the name of the calendar. So in this case, my YWD calendar, which already has all of the definitions of the time units that's included. So yeah, again, a script that can save you a ton of time because you don't have to create all of these measures one by one. Of course, these days, some people will say, well, why don't you just use a calculation group instead and then encapsulate all of the time intelligence logic in a calculation group? Well, you could absolutely do that. And you could even use the script to generate the calculation group for you. But there's some advantages to having individual measures with time intelligence as well. And that is because sometimes you want to set up a matrix in Power BI or some other visual where you need a combination of certain metrics that are aggregated in one way with other metrics that are aggregated in a different way. And so having a calc group in that case will not help you because then you're getting all of the combinations and you need to put filters up and so on. So yeah, that's why I prefer to have individual measures with these various time intelligence layers. But again, that's a huge hassle if you have to maintain all of these by hand. So once again, a very great use case of a script. And this demo also nicely showcases how scripts can create their own user interface, making it easier for the end user to interact with the script. So let's see, 8 more minutes. So
we can always go over a bit because it's you, Daniel.
Yeah, I know, but
don't tell anyone else though.
but I think I won't make it anyway. So
yeah.
So let me just quickly explain without going into too much detail, because this is also one of my favorite scripts, the master model pattern. The idea here basically is that if you have a scenario where you, for whatever reason, need to deploy multiple semantic models, which are basically subsets of the same sort of master model, then it's just a huge hassle if you want to maintain the source code for each model individually, like in separate Git repos or in separate folders or separate template files or whatever. Because in this case, you would, from a developer perspective, it would be nice to just have a single source of truth, a single definition of the model, and then being able to dynamically specify, okay, so in this Power BI workspace, I want my date table and I want my product table and my internet sales or whatever. But in this other semantic model, I still want the date table, but I only want a subset of the columns on the product table, for example, and then I want some different fact tables. And that's some of the things that the master model pattern can help us do. And so I'll just illustrate really quickly how it works. So let me open the model that I prepared for this, which is saved in Tyndall format, but it doesn't matter what format it's loaded from. So once again, it's just a boring AdventureWorks model that we've seen many times before. In this model, what I'm doing is I'm using a feature called perspectives, but I'm not using perspectives the way you usually would, which is to surface like a subset of the model to end users. Each perspective, of course, still specifies a subset of the model. Like, for example, my inventory perspective only specifies these 5 tables, whereas my internet operation table specifies a few more. So basically, you can think of these perspectives as views of the semantic model that just contains a subset of the object. And now, normally, if you deployed this model, you would still be deploying one model that had everything. Of course, users could decide to show just a separate perspective, but it wouldn't be like a securing. It's not a security feature. It won't prevent users from accessing everything in the model like you can do with object-level security. There could also be performance reasons for wanting to deploy smaller subsets of this model as individual models, and that could be like in ISV scenarios, for example. There could be many situations in which you want to do this. So what we have is a script which will basically look at these perspectives and then do like partial deployments of the model based on a perspective definition. And just to show you how it works, let's go into Management Studio. You can see right now I only have these 3 models in here. Here's AdventureWorks, that's sort of the source model that contains everything. And now let's try to run a script which is called deploy submodels. The reason we run this through the command line is because Tabular Editor 2 also has a command line interface which we can use to automate everything. So basically we can run Tabular Editor as part of this command line, run the script, and then use various command line options to do the deployment. And that's what's happening now. In fact, it's deploying 3 different versions of the model now, one for each of the 3 perspectives we saw before. Now it's done. So let's go into Management Studio and hit refresh. And now you see we now have these 3 versions of the model. So the same source code I use for all 3, but they contain different tables. As you can see, the inventory contains a smaller number of tables, so it's all based on the perspective. And of course, I don't have to deploy them to the same server. I could deploy them to different workspaces or whatever. But still, I keep everything, all of the source in one place, meaning if I have to update my date table, for example, by adding a new hierarchy or some new columns or whatever, I just do that in a single place, and then I run my deployment script again, and I get this change deployed out to all of my submodels. So hopefully you can appreciate, at least those of you who ever faced this scenario in real life, appreciate the benefit of having a script that can do this for you, instead of having to maintain the logic in each source repository for these models.
So Daniel, you need to come back.
I need to come back.
Yeah, and we just put on that it's advanced carrying on from, and people can just, so you don't have to do this, if you want to join, watch this one and then come back, and then we go to the advanced one, because I've seen how many scripts you've got in your thing for demo.
Yes. So yeah, and unfortunately we won't have time to go through all of them. I don't know why it took me because I presented this at Data Minds Connect a month ago, and there it only took me an hour to go through all of them. I guess I had more interactions during the presentation, so that's probably why it ended up taking more time. But anyway, so just to spend the last few minutes, just to show you what else is possible. Model Refresher is just a script created by Michael Kowalski, who's with the Fabric CAD team at Microsoft. So this is again an example where he's created actually really advanced custom UI inside his script, which will let you generate as another script for refreshing the model. So basically setting up partial refresh, like let's say you only want to refresh certain partitions or certain tables of the model, well then this script helps you basically specify exactly what areas. And I think it was inspired by how in Management Studio, when you do a process, or I think is it a table level maybe? Yeah, where you can, like, if you want to process certain tables, you can put like checkboxes here, and then you can script it all out. And basically, Michael's script does the same thing, just in Tabular Editor, but it provides even more granularity. So you can go down to the individual partition level and select what needs to be refreshed and so on. So really cool use of C# scripting as well. ChatGPT, we all know and love. Read the blog post. It has an example of how to actually call ChatGPT from inside a script. In this case, to apply automatic metadata translations of your model. So that's also a really nice demo. SVG measures, which you've also probably seen online. Super cool feature, but a nightmare if you have to maintain them by hand, because the DAX that produces the SVG is just extremely ugly and not something that I would ever want to have to write by hand. So naturally, a really good use of C# scripts. And Kurt has created this amazing repository of C# scripts where you basically just select what kind of visualization you want. And I have a sample snapshot here on the slide. So with SVGs, basically any type of visualization is possible, and the C# script in this case just lets you select from a large range of pre-prepared SVGs. So
yeah, we've got Jake giving us a session in a couple of weeks on UDFs and SVGs to, make it so much easier for us. He's done an amazing blog post.
Yeah, and speaking of UDFs, exactly, because those that you encapsulate the DAX, making it even easier to maintain this stuff going forward. And we also have some really great use cases of scripts. Yeah. In this case, the demo that you can check on the GitHub repo basically lets you, what it does basically is it replaces DAX code in a measure with the corresponding UDF. So assuming you have some UDF that encapsulates some logic that you're using across many measures, and then you want to update your measures to use the UDF instead of having the repeated code across many measures, then the script will do that for you. And so that's another nice little thing. And finally, if you want to play a game of Snake, and this one, I know we're just a bit over time, but I think it's just such a nice demo. This again was created by the amazing Kurt, just to show that truly anything is possible in a C# script. So now you can play a nice little game of Snake. And once you end, it will even save your high score down to a table on the model, so you can see how well you did and compare yourself to your colleagues. So yeah, anything truly is possible with C# scripts. So so sorry for running out of time. I'll be more than happy to do a follow-up session with
please. Yes, that's it. That's a yes. After Christmas, Daniel. Book it in
can you
February.
Just post that GitHub link in the chat for us, please?
Yeah.
That'd be brilliant. Thanks.
I'm happy to take any questions as well.
I think did someone have the hand up? I think Yuri had his hand up. That we'll I'll email you. We'll book it in if we can, Daniel, for February, and we'll make it very clear that this is the second session to follow on, so that you can go, hardcore advanced, because just so much to learn, and I love that you did it in TE too. I know it's such a passion of yours. But if you are looking and you're not using TE3, Daniel won't say it, but it costs less than 10 quid a month. So buy it yourself. It'll save you so much time. It really just is. It's a game changer in how you work with Power BI. And it's lovely. It's really responsive and lovely.
Well, TE3 has saved me days
and
days of work.
So guys, just quickly, I did not ask Sue and Antony to say that.
I know, but you're too nice.
We're just saying that. So
I say that anyway to anyone. I just say, well, it's 10 quid. What's £10?
Really
2 cups of coffee. Yeah.
Well, that's sweet music to my ears. I'm really glad you guys enjoyed. Thanks a lot.
Yeah. Oh, that's brilliant. Any last questions before we let Daniel go? Master model pattern. I haven't tried that. I need to try that.
Yeah, me too.
I need the world to stop spinning so I can just sit and learn without anything for a week.
That would be nice.
Wouldn't it? Yeah. I'm not sure, but we'll leave it in the chat, Julie, and see if people ask, and I will let Daniel go. Thank you, Daniel. I really, really appreciate it. As soon as I saw that you were doing that at Data Minds, I was on the email. If you've prepared that, come here. So we've had about 50 people join online, and I know that it will be watched on YouTube. And we'll touch base really dates for the new year where we'll start off where we finished, so that people will have a chance to learn to play with the scripts, and then we'll go hardcore into what you can do. So that would be absolutely brilliant. Yeah, thank you everyone for joining. Thank you for the questions and the interactions. There's been so much in the chat, and it really makes it, I think, for Antony and I, worth doing this every week to give back so that people can learn. So I think we've got the FUAM crew next week. I think it is.
Yeah, it is FUAM next week. So
yeah, so I don't know anything about that, so that's going to be really interesting. But yes, any questions, just we're all on LinkedIn, join in on LinkedIn, and feedback to us, but we'll commit to doing something in February, which will be next step on. So you've got a couple of months to get practicing. And have a great rest of the day, everyone. Thank you, Daniel. That was perfect as always. But any questions, just ping us in LinkedIn or join in, and I'll make sure this goes into the chat. So much love in the chat for you, Daniel.
That was awesome.
Yeah.